You're listening to Midnight Horror Whispers, the show where true stories from the edge of reality find their way into your ears. Wherever you are tonight, curled up in bed, driving down a quiet road, or sitting alone with the lights low, I want you to relax, take a deep breath, and let yourself sink into the story. Tonight, we have a chilling tale from rural America. A story that feels so real, you might find yourself checking your own windows after it's done. So, dim the lights, get comfortable, and prepare for the account of one man's encounter with something that shouldn't exist. And now, our guest speaks for the first time. He's here to tell us, in his own words, what happened to him. Wherever you're listening from, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy these true tales. And now, I'll let him take over.
My name's Daniel. I grew up in a small town in northern Kentucky, not far from the Ohio border. I wasn't much for ghost stories, never believed in them, really. But the summer after I turned 27, I moved into an old farmhouse my grandfather left me, sitting alone at the end of a dirt road that the locals just called the Hollow. It was late August when I first arrived. The sun was setting behind the ridges, and the air smelled of hay and wet earth. The house looked like it hadn't been lived in for decades. Paint peeling, windows dusty, shutters hanging off their hinges. I thought it was perfect, quiet, secluded, my kind of place. The first night, I unpacked, made a small fire in the old stone fireplace, and tried to convince myself that the creaks and groans of the old house were just what's settling. But even as I told myself that, I couldn't shake a feeling, like I wasn't supposed to be alone in that place. It started with small things. The floorboards in the hallway would squeak even when I hadn't stepped near them. I'd be in the kitchen, and the pantry door would swing open on its own, just a crack, as if someone had brushed past. I tried to ignore it. I kept telling myself that wind, or maybe an animal, was responsible. Then I found the first note. It was tucked behind a loose brick in the fireplace. A scrap of yellowed paper with words written in messy, slanted handwriting. Leave before night. I thought it was a prank, or maybe left by my grandfather decades ago as a joke. I laughed, crumpled it up, and threw it in the fire. But the unease wouldn't leave me. That night I heard it, the footsteps, slow, heavy, walking from the hallway to the kitchen, then stopping right behind me. I froze. My heart was pounding. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to know. The next morning, the note was back. Same words, same handwriting, now pressed on the kitchen table. Leave before night. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound was amplified. The wind through the broken shutters sounded like whispering voices. Somewhere upstairs, I thought I heard someone walking across the floorboards, even though the attic had been locked since I got there. Days passed, and the incidents grew stranger. Mirrors would fog up, even when the house was cool. I would wake in the middle of the night to the feeling of someone standing at the foot of my bed, always there, watching, silent. One evening, I went to the barn at the edge of the property. It had been empty for years, and I wanted to clean it up. As I opened the rusted door, I felt a cold wave rush past me, like someone had pushed through the air. Inside, the barn was empty, or so I thought. In the far corner, I saw a figure, a shadow of a man, hunched over like he was kneeling. I called out. No response. When I took a step closer, the shadow disappeared. After that, things escalated quickly. The knocking started. At first, it was occasional on the walls, on the floor, in the ceiling. Then it became constant. Every night, without fail, it would start just after midnight. A rhythm, like a heartbeat, pounding through the house. And then the whispering. Names, my name, softly at first, then louder, more insistent. I tried to leave, packed my things. But the moment I hit the dirt road to the main highway, something stopped me. The air grew thick, like the fog in the valley had suddenly dropped, and I could see the farmhouse from the road. But the lights were on. There weren't supposed to be lights on. The place had no electricity connected. Yet, through the windows, I saw shadows moving. Not me moving. Not the wind. Shadows of people, of figures. Watching. Waiting. I've told myself since then that maybe I imagined it. Maybe the isolation, the heat, The stress of moving into an old house did something to my mind. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I know, even now, that the hollow doesn't want anyone there. I sleep with the lights on now. I've never returned to that farmhouse since I left. But some nights, when the wind shifts just right, I swear I hear footsteps again. Outside my window. Slow. Heavy. Waiting. The days after that first night were a blur of unease and exhaustion. I tried to get back to a routine, fixing the roof, clearing weeds from the yard, even painting the peeling shutters. But no matter what I did, the house had its own rhythm, its own will. It was the third night that things went beyond just shadows and whispers. I was lying in bed, the ceiling fan creaking, when I felt it again, that presence at the foot of my bed. But this time I could see it. Not clearly, but enough. A figure, darker than the room, standing silently, watching me. My heart froze. I wanted to scream, but no sound would come. My body felt heavy, as though the air itself had turned to lead. I blinked, and it was gone. But the weight didn't leave. I could feel it all around me, pressing in like the walls were closing. I got up, shakily, and went to the window. The valley outside was quiet, empty, peaceful, except for one thing. In the distance, near the edge of the forest, there was movement. Figures, slowly emerging from the tree line. Not running, not walking, gliding almost. I told myself it was a trick of the moonlight, shadows of trees and branches. I wanted to believe that, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they knew I was watching, that they were waiting. The next morning, I found the second note. Same messy handwriting, same yellowed paper, but this one had changed. It said, "You can't leave." That hit me harder than anything before. I'd felt it before, that fear in my chest, but reading those words made it tangible. The house wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it didn't want me to go. I began to notice things in the daytime too. Small things like objects moving when I wasn't looking. A chair shifted an inch, a plate overturned in the sink. But more disturbing were the sounds. Footsteps in the hallways during the afternoon, soft at first, then growing louder as if something was pacing, circling me. Sometimes I would hear laughter, low, guttural, almost human but not quite. One night, desperate for sleep, I tried to convince myself that facing it would make it stop. I sat in the living room, flashlight in hand, and called out, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, a whisper so close it felt like it was inside my skull. "Don't leave. Stay forever." I ran upstairs and locked myself in the bedroom. But it didn't matter. That night I saw the walls move. Not slowly, but rippling, like the house itself was breathing. Shapes formed in the shadows. Faces, twisted and screaming silently. Couldn't look away, couldn't move. I was trapped in that living nightmare, paralyzed by fear and fascination at the same time. Days blended into nights. I lost track of how long I'd been there. Food sat uneaten. The mail piled up. When I forced myself to step outside, the air felt heavier, thicker. The valley, the trees, the field beyond the barn. All of it felt wrong, like I'd stepped into a place that wasn't meant for the living. It was during one of those desperate daylight walks that I found the old well behind the barn. The stones were covered in moss, and the water inside was black and still. I don't know why I felt compelled to look, but I leaned over the edge. For a moment, I thought I saw faces in the water. Pale, desperate faces, pressing against the surface from below. I stumbled back, heart racing, and the air turned icy cold. The whispering followed me back to the house. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. Every creak, every shadow, every whisper felt like it was coming from inside me. I tried talking to myself, rationalizing, but it was useless. And then I heard it. A voice, clear and unmistakable, whispering my name from the basement. I don't know why I went down there. Curiosity, courage, or the sheer terror of not knowing. The basement door was cold to the touch. The air inside smelled of damp earth and decay. As I descended the steps, I felt fingers brush my shoulder. Not human fingers. Long, thin, icy. I spun around, nothing. And then I saw it. At the far corner, where the shadows pooled thickest, a figure crouched. Its head tilted unnaturally, and its eyes, if you could call them that, reflected the faint light from the single bulb overhead. It didn't move. It just watched me. And for the first time, I understood. This wasn't random haunting. This was intentional. It was waiting. I ran back upstairs, heart hammering, and locked every door I could find. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. The house was alive, breathing, watching. And every night it became more daring, more bold. I began to realize that staying was a trap. But leaving wasn't an option either. Something didn't want me to leave. And I was learning too late that the house had a way of making that clear. I thought I'd seen everything the house had to offer by then, but I was wrong. By the 4th week, the presence didn't just linger in the shadows. It invaded everything I did. It started with the animals. My old dog, Rusty, who had been my companion for years, refused to come near the house. He would stand at the edge of the yard, growling at nothing, hackles raised, eyes fixed on the house as if he could see them too. One morning, I found him whimpering, nose pressed to the back door, staring at the basement window. I never went down there again. Then came the voices, not whispers this time, but speaking. Clear sentences, forming words in a language I didn't understand. The kind of language that makes your stomach twist and your skin crawl. I would wake in the middle of the night to conversations, like dozens of people just beyond the walls, speaking all at once, overlapping, incomprehensible. And every so often, I'd catch one word I understood. My name. Always my name. Objects began moving in ways that defied explanation. Plates slid off counters as if pushed. Chairs tipped over. Doors slammed shut with such force the entire house shook. I tried recording it on my phone, trying to convince myself it was just some trick I was imagining. But the recordings were always silent. Nothing. Just static, like the house itself swallowed the evidence. One night, I decided to leave. I packed my things, called a cab, and even started my car. The engine wouldn't start. The radio, which hadn't worked in years, came alive suddenly, blaring static, then faint, distorted laughter. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel, trying to make it stop. And then I heard it, footsteps behind me. Not on the road, not outside. Inside the car. Heavy, deliberate, pacing. I didn't look back. I knew what I'd see. I finally managed to get the engine running and drove as fast as I could down the hollow road. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I swear I saw it. The figure from the basement, standing in the middle of the road, watching me go. And then it vanished. Back at the house the next day, or what I thought was the next day, I found the notes again. More of them, taped to the walls, scattered across the kitchen table, tucked inside drawers. But these weren't warnings anymore. They were demands. You belong here. Don't try to leave. Forever. And it wasn't just the house anymore. I started seeing them outside. At night, when I tried to leave for groceries or even a walk, shadows appeared at the edge of the fields, just standing there, watching, always watching. Their forms weren't solid, more like smoke shaped into figures, but when I looked away, I could feel their gaze on me. Sleep became impossible. I would wake to feeling hands on my face, cold, clawing, pressing me down. Shadows crawling along the walls, whispering my name. Sometimes, when I turned on the lights, I would catch glimpses of them in the corners of my eyes. Pale faces with hollow eyes, mouths moving in silent screams. One evening, I sat on the porch, trying to keep my sanity. The sun had set, the air was thick and still, and then I heard it, a child laughing. Sweet, high-pitched, innocent, but coming from the barn. The barn had been empty for decades. Rusty barked and bolted from the porch, refusing to return. I grabbed a flashlight and forced myself toward the barn. Inside, the air was frigid. My breath came in clouds. And there, at the far end, was a little girl, pale, eyes dark and hollow, staring at me. She raised a finger, pointed directly at me, and whispered, "Stay." I ran back to the house and locked every door, every window. I stayed up all night, flashlight in hand, praying it would be gone in the morning. But when dawn came, The house was quiet only on the surface. Shadows still lingered in the corners. Faces pressed against the windows, mouths moving silently. That's when I realized this wasn't just a haunting. The house didn't want me out of curiosity. It wanted me trapped, and it would do anything to keep me there. Anything. I stopped counting the nights. Sleep didn't matter anymore. Daylight didn't either. The house had swallowed both. By the 5th week, time began to feel broken. Clock stopped. My phone battery would drain within minutes, no matter how long I charged it. Some mornings I'd wake and the sun would already be gone. As if I'd slept through an entire day I couldn't remember. The house had changed, too. The walls looked darker, as if stained by something seeping through from the other side. The smell of damp earth and rot never left. And the sounds, those were the worst. You'd think it would be the screams or whispers, but no. It was the breathing. I could hear the house breathing, every night. Long, deep, human breaths coming from the walls themselves. I started marking days on the kitchen wall to keep my sanity. But one morning, all the marks were gone. In their place was one message, carved into the plaster: "Stay home." Rusty was gone by then. I found the back door open, his collar lying on the porch. There was blood on the steps. I never saw him again. Something in me broke that night. I decided I'd rather die trying to leave than rot in that house another day. I packed what I could and waited for dawn. But when I opened the front door, dawn never came. It was night outside, black, endless night. The sky was wrong, full of stars I didn't recognize. The air was thick, heavy, almost solid. I stepped outside and realized I wasn't standing on my porch anymore. The field was gone. The trees were gone. The world was gone. All that existed was the house behind me, glowing faintly in the dark, and an ocean of nothing stretching out forever. I turned to go back inside, but the door had closed. I pounded on it, screaming, begging. The wood felt alive under my fists, pulsing with every hit. Then I heard it whisper, right next to my ear, "You were home." When I woke, I was back in bed. Morning sunlight through the window, birds chirping outside. For a second, I thought it was all a nightmare. But when I looked down, my hands were covered in dust and splinters. My knuckles were bruised. I'd really been outside wherever outside was. The notes had returned, hundreds of them now, pinned to the walls, the ceiling, the furniture. Each one written in the same hand. Some said my name over and over. Some said things I didn't understand. But one message appeared more than any other. Under the floor. I don't know why I listened. Maybe I was too tired to fight. Maybe curiosity finally replaced fear. But I tore up the old floorboards in the living room, one by one. Underneath, I found dirt, fresh, disturbed soil, and something buried just beneath it. It was a box, small, wooden, wrapped in cloth that smelled like mold and iron. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, of people I'd never met. Men, women, children, all standing in front of the farmhouse, smiling faintly, eyes dull and empty. And at the back of the box was a final picture. It was me, standing at the porch, smiling that same empty smile. I dropped the box, stumbled back, and that's when I saw them again. Dozens of figures standing outside the windows, surrounding the house. Every one of them pale, still watching. The little girl was there too, and this time she wasn't alone. They started moving closer, pressing their faces against the glass, their mouths moving in perfect silence. I could see their lips forming one word, over and over, "Stay." The walls began to shake. The house groaned. The air filled with dust and whispers. The photographs from the box scattered across the floor, sliding toward the fireplace like pulled by invisible hands. I watched, frozen, as they burned without flame, curling, blackening, disappearing into the air. And then everything stopped. Silence. Stillness. Not even my own breath dared to make a sound. That's when I heard it, the faintest sound, coming from below the floor again. A heartbeat, slow, heavy, like the house itself was alive, waiting for me to make my next move. I couldn't sleep that night. Every shadow, every creak, every whisper felt magnified. as if the house itself was breathing over me. But I couldn't ignore what I discovered under the floor. The heartbeat. It was calling me, drawing me back. The next evening, I forced myself to return to the living room. The floorboards were still removed, the hole yawning like a dark mouth. The air that rose from it smelled of wet earth and decay. My flashlight trembled in my hand. I knew I had to look. I climbed down into the crawl space. The dirt floor was cold and damp. My fingers dug into the soil as I moved forward, and that's when I saw it. A stone slab slightly raised above the ground. It wasn't part of the foundation, it had been placed there deliberately. Carved into the stone were symbols, strange and jagged, nothing I recognized. The heartbeat grew louder. I swear it wasn't mine anymore. I tried to back away, but the floor beneath me shifted. Not like the wood settling, but alive. Something was moving beneath the dirt. I heard scraping, clawing like nails on bone. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. The slab lifted, or maybe it moved itself. And there, inside a hollow beneath, I saw them. The bodies. Not fresh, not decayed, frozen, preserved in some unholy way. Hundreds of them, stacked carefully, faces still intact, eyes wide open. And then I realized something that made my blood run cold. I recognized some of them. People from the town. People who had gone missing over the decades. And in the very center, lying on a bed of dirt, was me, or what looked like me. Face twisted, eyes empty. I wanted to vomit, to run, to tear my own eyes out, but I couldn't move. I was frozen by the sight. The heartbeat was louder now, inside my skull. Then I felt it, hands. Thin, cold, reaching up from the box, grabbing my ankles, my legs, pulling me down. I fought, clawing at the dirt, trying to pull myself back into the crawl space. The walls seemed to shift, closing in. The hands dragged me closer to the bodies, closer to the slab, and the whispers began. Thousands of voices, chanting in that language I didn't understand, repeating one phrase over and over, "Join us." Somewhere deep in my mind, I remembered my grandfather's warning, something he had muttered once as a joke, or so I thought, about the hollow and the farmhouse. Something about it feeding, something about it never letting anyone go. I kicked and twisted, finally breaking free, crawling out of the crawl space, falling onto the living room floor. My flashlight skittered across the room, and then I saw it, the walls, covered in shadows, not human-shaped, more like liquid darkness, moving, swirling, reaching for me. I grabbed my coat, my keys, anything I could take, and ran to the door. But when I opened it, there was nothing. No yard, no dirt road, no morning sunlight. Just blackness. And the figures, the pale, hollow-eyed figures, all around me silently pressing in. The little girl at the center pointing, smiling. I screamed. And then, just like that, I was back in bed. Morning sunlight pouring through the windows. Rusty nowhere to be seen. My heart was racing so hard it hurt. I thought it was over. I thought I had dreamed it all. But when I looked at the living room floor, I saw it. A single note, scribbled on yellowed paper. Welcome home. I knew then, in a way I can never explain, that I had not left. That I would never leave. And the house, it had chosen me to join them, to be preserved, waiting, for the next unsuspecting soul to arrive. After that night, I stopped trying to leave. Couldn't. Every attempt, every plan, ended the same way. I woke back in my bed, the sun streaming in like nothing had happened, and the house waiting, patient, omnipresent. I began to notice things I hadn't before. The mirrors in the house. They weren't reflecting me. They reflected the house, yes, but not me. Sometimes, when I looked long enough, I would catch glimpses of the figures behind me in the glass, watching, always watching, their hollow eyes boring into my back. The sounds became unbearable. The whispers escalated into chanting. Footsteps paced the floor above me, circling, never stopping. And then the scratching began. Nails on wood, walls, floorboards, as if the house itself were trying to tear its way open from inside. I tried to communicate with them, in the only way I could think. I spoke aloud, begged for mercy, pleaded to leave. And one night, I heard a response. A voice, deep, low, echoing, from the walls themselves. You belong. The air turned thick, hot, and heavy, and the shadows started to move on their own. They swirled around me, forming shapes, distorted, impossible angles, faces I recognized and faces I did not. The little girl appeared again, floating above the floor, pointing at me, smiling that same empty smile. Then the room shifted. The walls stretched, warped, turning into a corridor that seemed to go on forever. I ran, even though I didn't know where I was going. I screamed, but no sound came. The floor pulsed beneath my feet, rising and falling like the beating of a great heart. I could feel it in my chest, in my skull, as if the house had become a part of me. Somewhere along the way, I saw the photographs again. They floated in the air, spinning slowly, showing images of everyone who had entered the house before me. People I recognized from town, strangers, faces smiling, faces twisted in terror. And in the very center, my own photograph appeared, slowly decaying, eyes darkening. I don't know how long I ran through that endless corridor. Time lost all meaning. Every step I took was mirrored by shadows, by whispers, by cold, crawling hands. The house was alive, aware, feeding on my fear. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear a laugh, low, guttural, as if it had been waiting decades for me to arrive. By the end of that night, I realized something I hadn't dared to admit. The house didn't just want me there. It wanted me to see, to understand. It wanted me to join. And no matter what I did, no matter how I ran, how I screamed, how I begged, I couldn't escape. I've tried to rationalize it since. Isolation, stress, sleep deprivation. Maybe I'm losing my mind. But I know the truth. And if you ever come across that farmhouse at the end of the hollow, don't go in. Don't look at the windows. Don't stay. Because once you do, it's already too late. By the time the 7th week came, I stopped keeping track of days entirely. I didn't eat much. I didn't drink much. The house had me, body and soul. Every step I took, every breath I drew, felt like it belonged to the walls themselves. It started with the shadows becoming solid. Not just forms, not just glimpses in corners, but full figures, moving through the house as if they had weight. They walked the halls, stared through the windows, leaned over furniture. And they weren't silent anymore. They whispered my name, called me to join them, laughed in that hollow way that made my bones ache. The little girl appeared again, only she wasn't alone. There were others with her now, pale, hollow-eyed children, standing silently in the corners, their eyes following me, their smiles empty and cruel. One of them stepped forward, and I realized it wasn't a child at all, just a figure made to look like one, stretched and twisted, impossibly thin, long limbs bending where they shouldn't. And then I heard it, the heartbeat, not the quiet one from before, but loud, deafening, like the house had become a living thing with one massive, monstrous heart. The floor beneath me throbbed in time with it. I fell to my knees, pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. I could feel it in my chest, in my skull, in my very bones. I tried to run, but the walls shifted again, turning the rooms into endless corridors. The doors I tried to open led nowhere, only deeper into the maze. And the shadows followed, circling, moving, always just beyond the reach of the flashlight I held in trembling hands. That's when I saw them, the faces, hundreds, maybe thousands, pressed into the walls themselves. Not painted, not drawn, living faces. Silent, expressionless, eyes staring through me, mouths moving in slow, dreadful motions. They were the people who had come before me, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was next. I screamed until I couldn't scream anymore. I ran until I couldn't run anymore. And then I felt it, the hands again, cold, rigid, clawing at me, dragging me toward the center of the house. I fought, twisted, kicked, but I couldn't break free. The shadows, the walls, the very floor were alive, holding me, shaping me, pulling me down. And the little girl, she floated above me now, pointing, smiling, her eyes empty pits of nothing. Around her, the other figures closed in, circling, whispering, chanting, reaching, pulling, dragging. And I realized, in a moment of horrifying clarity, that I wasn't just trapped. I was becoming part of the house. The heartbeat swallowed me, the whispers consumed me, and as the shadows pressed closer, I knew I would never leave. Not really. The house had claimed me, and I understood, finally, the truth my grandfather had hinted at. The hollow doesn't just haunt, it feeds, and it waits for those foolish enough to step inside its walls. I don't remember how long it's been. Days, weeks, maybe years, I can't tell anymore. Time doesn't exist in the hollow. The house has no regard for it. It only exists to feed, to trap, to consume. I am still here, not fully myself. The shadows and the walls, the whispers and the heartbeat, they've made me part of the house. I can feel it in my chest, in my limbs, in my thoughts. Sometimes, I catch glimpses of my old body lying in the photographs, the empty-eyed version, waiting silently beneath the floorboards. And sometimes, I see new faces, strangers, foolish people who came too close, peering through the windows, and the house smiles for them, silently, hungrily. I've tried to warn people. I've tried to tell them not to come, not to step onto the hollow's dirt road. But the words never leave me. They're trapped here too, like me, just echoes carried on the wind that seeps through the cracks and broken windows. If you ever find yourself near an old, isolated farmhouse at the end of a dirt road in the hollow, don't stop. Don't even glance at it. Don't let curiosity or disbelief lure you in. Once you step inside, the walls will watch, the shadows will wait, and the heartbeat will call. And no matter how fast you run, no matter how loud you scream, no matter what you do, it will not let you go. I am Daniel, and I am still here,